Cisco Secure Workload, Shared Services Mandate, time services available to all data center resources. All right, let's get started. Let's go to Defend, Segmentation. Let's create a new workspace. Let's give it a name. In this case, we'll call it Time Services and give it a description, something that makes sense. Here I say time services available to the data center resources. Time services also need access to outbound to the internet for updates. The scope itself, it's going to be shared services. Let's search for shared services, and we're going to actually apply this right to infrastructure and production. Okay, here we're going to use the application dependency mapping. Because time services may have a variety of elements that are required in order to provide the services, we're going to actually use the application dependency mapping to make recommendations on policy. So this will take a few moments to run. Once it goes through the analysis, we'll review and determine whether or not we need to make any adjustments before moving forward with policy enforcement. So here's the breakdown. Basically, the first line here says data center web services retail test is accessing that production environment using UDP 123. We also have retail production talking to infrastructure production using UDP 123. And then we've got production, infrastructure production going out to the all IP address or the root zone, and you can see a variety of ports here, including secure workload. And then that last one is data center to infrastructure production using UDP 123. So UDP 123 is NTP, which is time services. And you can see here we've got a catch-all of deny. So we're actually going to go into what we would call is micro-segmentation or application segmentation. The host itself is going to only allow the ports that we've identified. Everything else will be denied by default. Now, one of the checks and balances that we can do before we go ahead and apply enforcement is running policy analysis. And that's what we're doing here. And this is going to allow us to determine whether or not the policy is fit for enforcement. So what that means is that if we see any escaped flows, as an example, based on the current data patterns and flows that are communicating with the services, then we can either adjust, meaning adjust policy to accommodate those flows, or find out where they're communicating from and use an upstream control, like a layer 3-4 next-gen firewall, as an example, and block those communication channels from even getting here. So currently we see nothing showing up in regards to flows that are escaping. So we're going to go ahead and apply the policy and go right into full enforcement mode here. Again, I can review the policies. I can see what hosts they're going to be applied to, which are the time servers. I can see the catch-all action is deny. And I give a reason for enforcement action here, mandated policy for time services. And that's it. All right, let's start testing some of this out. So we're on NTP production 2. So this is in our data center. And let's go ahead and do an apt get update. And let's see if we can get out to the internet. And it looks good. And that's an expected outcome. We know that we have port 80 outbound as allowed and 443. So let's go ahead and ping. Let's internet resource again, google.ca. And we can do that as well. Again, that is in our policy as allowed. All right, let's try something else here. Let's go ahead and curl. We'll do google.ca. And that works. So we know that we're using HTTP here. And let's go ahead and try something in the DMZ. So some of the web services or production web services that we might have available, or test, it doesn't really matter here. And we'll go to 3001, and this probably will fail, right? If you think about the policy that's enforced, it should. And in fact, it does. We don't get a response whatsoever. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's try SSH Now remember, the previous video we did a mandatory policy that suggests only IT ops and sec ops from host 192.168.255.129 should be able to SSH into data center resources, both in the DMZ and in the data center itself. And you can see when we tried to do it within the data center, it failed. And now we're going to try to do it from the data center to the DMZ, and this should fail as well. Again, there's an absolute mandatory policy higher up in the scope tree that's enforcing this rule. All right, let's look at some of the output here. Now, the first thing that we can see is a little bit further down, we can see that 123 is available, UDP 123. So we know communication's happening for NTP synchronization, so we're good there. Let's focus on rejected. And we can see a bunch of rejections here. And look at that. Here's that 3001 from that host that we tried to connect to in the DMZ. Now this one's failed. It failed because it's hitting that catch-all deny policy. And we can see that here. So it gives us a clear description of what the communication channel is and why it was denied. In this case, it was denied because of the catch-all policy on that time services side that we've created. Now, when we do a quick analysis, we can actually look at the output and determine what policy actually is doing the enforcement. Even though we can visually see it below, this kind of gives you the policy decision and it'll let you manipulate it. So you can do additional tests here as well. So we'll do one here for 8.8.8, port 80, and you can see this one's an allow policy, and which policy is the one that in fact made the decision to allow. So the quick analysis is certainly something that will help in troubleshooting and determine what might be going on if the outcomes aren't the outcomes that you're expecting. Okay, I think this looks good. I think we've proved the point here that we've got micro-segmentation in play, policies being enforced pretty quick. Again, this is an easier asset to profile and run application dependency mapping on. It's a very simple service that's on it. Of course, that, you know, if you've got a more elaborate services, you're going to run application dependency mapping over a longer period of time. All right, let's go ahead and let's look at IP tables on NTP production 2, and let's grab NTP. And let's have a look here, and we can see that we certainly see NTP being called out in policy. This is not really where you're going to do your troubleshooting when you're trying to understand the policy that's being enforced on an asset. But this is a good way to have a quick visual to see that there's SSH, there's allow, there's NTP being called out. But really what you want to do is go into secure workload, go to manage, go to agents, go to agent lists. And again, you can pivot from multiple different ways to get here. Go into the workload of interest and scroll down to concrete policies, and this will show you every policy that's enforced on that asset. So you can see here we've got multiple different policies that are enforced. Port 22, 123. We've got some multiple ports, 5380, 443, 5660. And it gives direction, ingress versus egress, the protocol. All of this you can see very easily within Workload GUI. And we can even drill into each one of these and have a really good look at the policy that's being enforced, the bytes, the packets, etc. Really powerful stuff.